All right, we are in Genesis chapter 6, verse number 15. Genesis 6, verse number 15. This is really exactly where we left off last week. We were looking at the dimensions of the ark, Noah's ark. All right, so it is, verse 15, the fashion you shall make of it like this: the length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, the height of it 30 cubits. So 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet tall. No, I'm not even going to bother. Yeah, oh, sure, there it is. So 450 feet long, 75 feet wide. Is that right? Or no, remember, backwards. 75 feet wide and 45 feet tall. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. All right. That's in American, that's in freedom units. If you're in European units, 137 meters by 23 meters by 14 meters. The more important thing is, like, practically, how would you quantify that? It is a structure big enough to hold 24,000 tons of cargo. You could fill half the ark with food and still have more than enough space left over for all the animals it will hold, plus separate accommodations for the 8 souls who are going to be living in it. And you might think, well, if they're like Noah is, while building this, also preaching to get more than you would think 8 souls in it. So how is he going to, how does that, I'll answer that question with a statement. That's how you answer questions. And that is, here in a little bit, we're going to see that God tells him to bring in food for them to eat. And you think, well, does Noah know how long he's going to be on the ark? And no, he doesn't. He's going to store by faith in the same way he's going to build by faith. He's going to build as big as it needs to be for who is going to be on this boat. It just so happens it's going to hold 8 people. If 1,000 people had obeyed the message, if God knew 1,000 people were going to obey the message, the dimensions and the parameters of it would have been big enough to accommodate them. 8 are going to go in. It's built for 8. That's just how God knows stuff, and that's that. Forget its size for a second. What's remarkable about it, it's a football field and a half long. It's half a football field wide. It's almost 4 stories tall. Its shape is the biggest, I hate to call it a boat because it's not a boat. There's nothing boat-like about it except it's in the water. But for lack of a better, it was the largest boat ever constructed until 1884. And its dimensions, its shape, being 6 times longer than it is wide, is still the standard for seafaring vessels of the modern era. Its design meant that 2/3 of it could have been underwater and yet still buoyant, which I think that's about 2/3. I think I eyeballed that pretty well. 2/3 of it could have been underwater and still buoyant. It could have withstood a 200-foot wave crashing into it, and it would have been fine. It could have gone almost 90 degrees and not capsized. It could have righted itself. After going almost 90 degrees, it could have righted itself. That's how perfectly designed this baby was. Contrast that with the ship at the heart of the Gilgamesh epic, which it's part of it's just one part of a bigger story, but in the Gilgamesh epic is the idea that there is a flood that's coming and you have to build this vessel to get inside and to withstand the flood. That vessel that they get inside is a 120 by 120 cube. It's a cube they're getting inside. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever looked at the ice cube that you have in your water cup of water or whatever. But if you have a clear glass of water sometime and a square ice cube or a cube ice cube, and you do one of these to it, watch what happens to the ice cube. Just the slightest bit of turbulence. Just give it a little bit of a jostle and watch that ice cube go all the way around. Now imagine you're living inside one of those. That is not suitable for people living in for any duration of time. You would either be dead or wish you were when the first wave crashes into it. But critics of the Bible love to hold up the Gilgamesh epic, and they love to say, oh, the Bible is just a fairy tale that is derivative of older fairy tales like the Gilgamesh epic, because the Gilgamesh epic was penned before Moses penned Genesis. And so they say, well, Moses just copied the Gilgamesh epic. But wouldn't it make more sense? Wouldn't it make more sense for Moses to have written the history based on something that is more scientific and the derivative work? Like if Moses is writing history, mind you, for the history to be more scientific and the derivative work to be less scientific. Doesn't it make more sense for what actually happened to be more plausible? And then later, the bastardized, diminished version, the stupidified version, the watered down, dumbed down version that Gilgamesh and those people, Chaldean, Babylonian sort of progenitors wrote, that would be the diminished version. Doesn't that make more sense? I know it makes more sense because that's what always happens with these sort of things. You've got the Lord of the Rings and everything else that came after, which is just not as good. Whatever the history is always going to be better. And if I'm comparing these two things, one of these is very obviously better. One's the one I want to get inside, the one's the one you could not get me inside, no matter how hard you tried. So, but still, critics of the Bible love to talk about Noah and the ark, and they love to say such a structure is ridiculous. They say it's unfathomable. They say it's stupid to imagine that one guy could have built this thing by himself. Who said one guy built this by himself? They said that. Moses didn't write that. Nowhere does it say that Noah built this by himself. The text doesn't say that at all. And even if it was just Noah and a couple of guys, even if it was Noah and just his 3 sons, I suppose his wives could help too, and their wives too. And let's say he recruited no outside help, which is not impractical. Like, I have seen atheists build church buildings. It is not completely unfathomable that Noah could have got outside help. But let's just set that aside. Let's just say, could people have built such a structure? Yes. Look at the pyramids. Look at the great ships of the Phoenicians. Look at the wonders of the world. Look at the Colossus of Rhodes. Look at some of the amazing ancient structures that ancient man built without a single backhoe or power tool. Ancient man has done some amazing things. So looking at the ark, and you can go see it right now in Kentucky, looking at the ark, it's an awesome spectacle. You should not think a man can't have built this, or a group of men could not have built this, because groups of men have built all kinds of amazing things, this just being among them. Noah had 3 sons in 120 years. I firmly believe that God is not going to give him a commandment and not give him the tools, literal and figurative, to fulfill that commandment. Verse 16. On this ark, a window you shall make to the ark, and a cubit shall be you shall finish it above. And the door of the ark you shall set in the side thereof, with the lower, second, and third stories you shall make it. So my Bible says window. I wonder, do you have a different translation in verse 16? A roof? Yeah, that's even better. So it's just a little something, that sticks about a cubit up. So, just a cubit up from the height. So, I know none of this is to scale. None of this is that accurate. It's just, we're doing the best we can here. So it's just a slightly raised compartment that kind of goes around, if not the entirety of it, then a chunk of it, that is just separated. It's not like a window. It's not like a window. It's like a raised, elevated, thing. So with that, you'll make it. And then you'll have a door set in the side, and then you'll have 3 stories. And that actually is the extent of the particulars that you're given. Other than the measurements of it, you're not given any insight into the interior of it or how it's designed on the inside and how it all worked. All you're told is you have this elevated thing, which we'll see come to play when Noah starts releasing birds. And then you have a door on the side of it, and then lower, second, and third stories. And since you have something that is 45 feet tall, you don't necessarily have to conclude that each one is, equidistant, that they're all the same height. You could very easily have one that's like 8 feet tall, an 8 foot tall level, one that's like, 12 feet tall, one that's like whatever else is the number, I don't do math, that's left. You could have differently sized spaces. Like this could be living quarters, this could be food, this could be animals. It doesn't have to be all the way across too. You can have different levels. And I'm not saying that God doesn't have those things in his own mind that he gives to Noah. I'm just saying Moses wasn't given them by the Holy Spirit, so Moses doesn't write it down. Either way, those are the specifics you're given. Window, door, 3 stories. Not equal stories. Not to say stories like we count them, which is like 10 feet tall in our modern construction, because, they're bigger than that. Verse 17. And behold, God says, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. This is just a reiteration of the promise that he's already made. Noah, however, is not going to be destroyed. He's going to get in the ark that God is telling him to build here. So that finishes the sentence in verse 18. But with you I will establish my covenant. And you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. God is promising a global destruction, but God is tempering that by promising global salvation. There are conditions to be met. Salvation is still from God. Noah could not have known the flood was coming, but by God's word. Noah could not have known how to survive the flood, but by God's commandments. Noah did what was commanded, but it is still God who gets the credit for saving Noah. And so it is with our salvation. We do what we're told. We're still saved by grace. Ephesians 2, 5-8. Obedience does not negate grace. Obedience has nothing to do with grace. Earning something is about forcing somebody's hand. Grace is a gift you cannot earn. The gift giver can ascribe whatever prerequisites he wants to the gift. And if you fulfill them, then you receive it. God does that, and when I obey God, I receive the gift. Yet it is still called grace. So let's talk about this with an analogy. If I say to you, and I don't have it on me anymore, I had 2 quarters and I gave them away. If I said to you, if John, I'm specifying, if you go outside, I'm not going to give you money. If you go outside and you whistle Dixie in the rain, I will give you 50 cents. Now, I have given John something that John did not earn, that John is not going to earn. Even if John goes outside in the rain and whistles Dixie, he is not going to earn the money. He is doing what I told him to do to receive the thing he doesn't deserve. He's done nothing to earn it. He's not going to do anything to earn it. It's a free gift that I'm just going to give him, but I'm attaching to it a prerequisite. Go outside in the rain, whistle Dixie. He does so, he gets the gift. It's still not earned. You know how I know it's not earned? Because if Ryan goes outside and whistles Dixie and then holds out his hand, I'm going to just look at him and be like, you idiot, I didn't tell you to do it. You don't get anything. You get nothing. You get nothing because I didn't tell you to do it. And you can't, if you just went out there and did it and you somehow forced my hand and I had to give it to you, now it's earned. Now it's not grace. But because it's my gift to give to whomsoever I will, howsoever I will, then I set the requirements, I set the prerequisites, and I even set the parameters of the extent of it. In this case, I limit it to one. In God's case, he limits it to the world, John 3:16. Again, the gift giver can ascribe whatever prerequisites he wants. God does. I obey them, and yet it's still grace. You know how I know that? Because apart from all the other reasons, I know because I cannot be saved by doing something else. I did not decide that I had to be baptized. God did that. I might have decided myself. I might have said, yeah, well, I'm not feeling baptism. How about I just clap 4 times like in the Friends intro? And that'll save me. And I can just come up with that if I want. And I can just do it if I want, but it's not going to save me because God didn't say to do that. But he did say to be baptized, 1 Peter 3:21. Why? Because it's God's gift and he establishes the prerequisites for obedience. God's covenant with Noah. By the way, first time covenant is used in your Bible, to the best of my knowledge. God's agreement between 2 parties. That's what the word covenant means. I'll give you the gift if you do the thing. You do the thing, you get the gift. God's covenant with Noah is conditional upon Noah's obedience. He needs to build the ark, and he needs to be faithful too. We'll see that later. Verse 19. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort you shall bring into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. That's a generalization. As we'll see in chapter 7, there's actually going to be a whole segment of animals that go in by 7s, but generalized by 2s, he says here. So you might read this and think, how is Noah supposed to round up all the kinds of animals? I know he's not getting literally every single animal or every single derivation of animals, but kinds, so major species. You may think, well, how is he going to pull that off? I don't want you to have the visual that Noah is running around with a butterfly net trying to catch a squirrel or something. If God brings the animals to Adam to be named, he's going to bring them to Noah to be boarded. So that solves that great quandary. And male and female. Because we're starting over, we need to populate the earth or repopulate them in that sense. Verse 20. Of birds after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of creeping thing after their kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto you, and you shall keep them alive. And how will he keep them alive? In the place where God said to keep them. All Noah has to do is just shepherd them while they're here. The job of a bishop in that sense. Verse 21. And take unto you of all the food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to you, and it shall be food for you and for them. So food for Noah, his sons and their wives, and his wife, and food for all of the animals that are going to be on the ark with you. But again, as I said a minute ago, Noah doesn't know how much food he's going to have to take. Noah doesn't know how much food he's going to need because he's not been told how long the journey is going to last. If he is, he can do the calculations and he can figure out, I need this much grain, I need this much whatever to have all the food. All he knows is get in the boat. At some point, eventually, I'm going to tell you to get out of the boat. And he's got to have enough food to last. How is that even possible? I would remind you that God once fed 5,000 men plus women and children with a couple of loaves of Wonder Bread and 2 anchovies. God can handle this. You just store. And if you remember, they ripped and they separated, they divided the bread, and when it was over, they had food left over. Like, how does that miracle even work? That's the one that I always wanted to see, other than the Red Sea crossing, was just you're ripping bread and there's still more bread. I don't understand how that works. But however it worked was by God's design. And so it is. So it is. You're going to pack up your food and it's just going to last. When the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, at the time the wandering was over, their sandals were still whole. Their clothes were untattered. How does that even work? With erosion as a thing and with natural, things wearing down your clothes. How does that work? God's how it works. God is how all this is working. It blows my brain when people read this and they say, I just don't see how God can do that. Like, do we concede page 1 in the beginning, God? If we concede that, this is small potatoes. This is nothing. God made the universe. Him flooding it is just nothing. I don't understand people get bent out of shape about Genesis. 22. Thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he. A nice, simple, calm before the storm sort of verse, because Noah has just been given some, if I may, audacious commands by the Lord. Like he has been told, first of all this is predicated on, I'm going to bring rain from the sky, which to us, it happens all the time. But Noah had never seen that before, because as we've been told, it had not rained on the earth. There was just this mist that came up from the ground and it watered the plants. And that's all they'd ever seen. And now God is saying, no, actually there's a whole lot of water up there and I'm about to bring it down here. And Noah just accepts that on faith value. And he builds the boat because God told him to. He builds this thing. Like, have you been to Kentucky? It's humongous. It's remarkable to behold. And Noah just builds it solely on faith. Verse 7. Or chapter 7, I mean. Chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said to Noah, come, you and all your house into the ark. For you I have seen righteous before me this generation. So Moses, the writer, from Genesis chapter 6, verse 22 to Genesis 7, verse 1, skips a century. I don't know how long, 120 years to some period of time, until the time the flood is starting. The entire building of the ark. I know you're not about to ring the bell. You're not about to ring the bell, are you? No. Okay. The entire building of the ark is just glossed over by Moses. Because what is there to say? It's a construction project. It's just boring work. So he builds it. Now we cut to time for the flood. So God tells Noah, come into the ark, because it's about to happen. Verse 2. Of every clean beast you shall take to you by 7s, there you go, male and female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, male and female. So clean animals, 7 male, 7 female. Unclean animals, 2 male, 2 female. Go in. This is, like, at the time of its writing, at the time of its first reading, you hear about unclean animals and clean animals, you don't bat an eye. Because this is Moses writing to Israel, who are already familiar with the Sinaitic law of clean animals and unclean animals. They've already, if not read Leviticus, because it's still 2 books away, they have at least heard Leviticus. They know the expectations of God, what animals to eat and not eat, sacrifice and not sacrifice, touch and not touch. But as we see, we're going to see in a minute, it's not the same. Like what God is calling clean and unclean here is not going to be what God calls clean and unclean in Leviticus. The parameters are different. But there was still some sort of distinction that Noah understood, because God doesn't elucidate. God doesn't say, so now I'll tell you what clean animals are. Noah seemed to understand what was a clean animal, what was an unclean, how many needed 7s and how many needed 2s. It was understood. So all I can assume, therefore, and it's just an assumption, all I can assume is that God told the patriarchs what kind of animals he regarded as clean and unclean to them. And probably, this is just an assumption, probably for the purposes of sacrifice. Especially if you take the idea, which is very common, that the pre-flood man, the antediluvian man, was vegetarian. And they didn't become meat eaters until after the flood. Maybe you argue with vegetarian, and then after the fall, then they became meat eaters. But either way, there's going to be some eating. There's going to be, if not eating, there's going to be some sacrificing, And if you're going to be offering sacrifices, and if we already have the whole Cain and Abel thing, God accepts and God doesn't accept certain qualities of sacrifice, then maybe that's what he's doing. He tells them these animals are clean for sacrificing, unclean for not sacrificing. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know. All I know is Noah understood these animals are clean, and he didn't bat an eye about it. When we get to Leviticus, God's going to specify these are clean, these are unclean in much more detail. Look at verse 3. Of the birds of the air, take by 7s. He doesn't specify which birds. He just says all the birds you take by 7s, which means all the birds are clean. In Leviticus, some birds are not clean. Pigeons are clean. Eagles are not clean. So here, but a pigeon and an eagle would have gone in by 7, both considered clean in the antediluvial era. So distinction from the law of Moses, but still, they are what they are. Male and female to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth. They're going to procreate. Verse 4. Because in 7 days, I'm going to cause it to rain upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I've made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Again, not counting the aquatic animals. That's just the great qualifier. We all have read and heard that. God does not have to specify every single time. Oh, except the aquatic animals. God does not say what he says and write what he writes to accommodate pedants, to accommodate nitpickers. He generalizes. Noah already knows. Noah is not going to be regarded as needing to round up dolphins. He knows they're in the water already. This is a water thing. I don't have to worry about dolphins. I got to worry about birds. I got to worry about cows, etc. Verse 5. There's our phrase again. Noah did everything that God commanded him. No matter how crazy it sounds, no matter how much no one has ever seen anything like this, you want the ark finished? I'll finish it. You want the animals provided for? I'll provide for them. You want food? For how long? I'll do it. I'll provide the food. Family comes in. I can't control the weather. That is God's judgment. That is God's business. All I can do is what God has told me to do. I can control that. I can do that. And let God do the rest. That's a good template to follow. Verse 6. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were upon the earth. During that time, in that 600 years, he builds this great vessel. He preaches righteousness to the world, 2 Peter 2:5. He was, in effect, the first very classical, traditional prophet, as we use the word, declaring judgment upon an evil generation, promising God's wrath on them. Verse 7. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his son's wife with him, into the ark because of the waters of the flood. So he's 500 years old when he has his sons, in chapter 5, verse 32. 600 years old when the rain starts coming down. So he has been preparing for this moment. His sons have been hearing about this moment for their entire lives. This project has entirely consumed Noah. Not just the building, but all the preaching about what the building is for. He's been doing all of this work, and now it's coming to his fruition. And when all of his work is done, and he turns around and he sees the open door of the ark, and he's ushered in the animals, and now he's ushering in the people. He ushers in his wife, he ushers in his sons, he ushers in his sons' wives, and the whole rest of the world has said no. So just by the mathematics of it, the world would say that's a failed preacher. Because he's preaching to the world, and everybody on the planet except for just 7 people said no to his message. But if you ask Noah, he would say, yeah, but look at the 7 I got. I got my wife, I got my sons, I got their wives. Noah would say, that's a home run. That's a smash success. Of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creeps upon the earth. Verse 8, this is the work of Noah. He leaves nothing undone. He does all that God says to do. Well, let's finish the sentence. Verse 9. They went in 2 by 2 and 7 by 7, but, again, whatever. Into the ark, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. Every animal, every clean beast, every unclean beast, every creeping critter, they all into the ark. How? Like, have you ever tried to get just one chicken to go from point A to point B? And I grew up on a farm. I don't know if you know that. And I grew up with chicken houses, and they were like as big as that. I would think about as big as that sucker. And you got to walk. Now, granted, you don't have to get them anywhere, but you got to walk through them. And they don't care that you're walking through them. And so you're constantly just gingerly walking around them, walking through them, so you don't step on them, because they'll just let you step on them, and they'll let you crush them, and they'll let their brains squirt out of their eyeballs. And it's just disgusting. And I hated it. And I'm glad I'm out of it, except we have chickens now and I don't understand it. Yeah, you don't look at me. So, shut it. So, you cannot herd a chicken. So how is it that Noah is herding chickens? By the power and the providence of God Almighty. That is how. The same God who ushered the animals to Adam and told them to sit still and wait while he comes up with a name is now the God who ushers in the animals of all kinds, docile and not docile, feral and not feral, to come into the ark, to be boarded, to be placed where God would place them. You have free will. And God is not going to hijack your brain and make you do something against your free will. But a donkey, God will hijack that sucker's brain without batting an eye. He does it in Numbers 22. He hijacks the brain of Balaam and makes him start talking. Balaam's donkey. So God is not going to make you turn left when he would rather you turn left and you want to turn right. But God also has free will. And if he wants to put something in the way of your donkey and make your donkey say, I'm not going to walk into that angel with a sword and cause you to crash into a wall, that's just fine. God's going to do that too. So animals are not free will creatures. They act on instinct. They can be hijacked, and God is hijacking them here, as he did with Adam. And as he'll do again with the lions when Daniel's thrown into the den, Daniel 6:22. Verse 9. There went in 2 by 2 unto Noah and the ark, male and female, as God commanded. Verse 10. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. Everybody's on board. The door is shut. The rain comes down. Salvation is in God's hands. Noah is safe. Judgment is also in God's hands. If you're not in the ark, you get judgment. It's the exact same event. But whether you're inside or outside, it is the exact same event. that means something very different to you. The same thing on like a surface level, on like a literary level. But whether you're in the boat or out of the boat, the same thing is very different. It's either going to kill you or it's going to save you. You're in there, and this floodwater is either going to wash away the sinners or you are the sinner getting washed away. Just you get to choose is the beautiful part about it. Verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, on that day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So most people, when they talk about the flood, they just focus on rain, which is fine. That's the simplest way for our brains to grasp it. You've got the ground here, you've got the sky up here, and you've got rain now falling, presumably clouds. So rain is falling, 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days and 40 nights, the rain is falling. That is not at all, that is not just what Moses writes. He says again in verse 11, that it's not just the windows of heaven were open, and that's a poetic way to say water come down, but also the fountains of the great deep are open. Imagine every volcano on earth spewing forth not just ash, but bursting forth water that is under there. What's the water doing under there? Well, I'll tell you, before the flood came, the water was slowly rising up as a little mist. God just let the water come up. But now God's going, and the water is exploding and bursting over the entire world. That's what's happening right now. It's just so amazing the way Moses crafts this. Like, this does not come out of nowhere. Again, the precedent is already set for us in 2 verse 6. A little bitty mist. But now that same source of water that is beneath is now bursting forth to flood the earth. So water is like pancaking the ground. It's coming up and it's coming down. And it's coming suddenly and it's coming violently. Verse 12. And the rain was upon the earth, as I said, 40 days and 40 nights. And sea levels are rising as the aforementioned fountains are bursting. Just a second. Verse 13. In that same day, when the water was going to come down, the same day the water is coming down, presumably before that, entered Noah with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, we call her Mrs. Noah, and the sons of them into the ark. We do. I didn't name it, but like she's been called Mrs. Noah for like 300 years. It goes back a long time, Mrs. Noah. Verse 14. They and every beast after their kind, and all the cattle after their kind, every creeping thing on the earth after their kind, and every fowl of the earth after their kind, and every bird of every sort, they all were in there, ready to go. Verse 15. And they went in unto Noah, two of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Already covered that. Verse 16. And they went in, male and female of all flesh, minus aquatic life, we know, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Practically, the door was probably so massive, Noah probably couldn't have shut it. Subtextually, like metaphorically, there's great significance behind God shutting the door. I'm sure you've heard many sermons back in the day on that subject. God is the judge. God decides who is saved. God decides who is condemned. God leaves it up to the people gives them the power to choose to be saved or to be lost, life or death, salvation or condemnation. He leaves it up to them, but when the moment comes when now is the deciding factor, when your choice comes into play, when your choice has its consequences for good or for not, then God is the one who initiates that. God is the one who sparks that. God shuts the door and the water starts falling. So let's talk about predestination. God decided in that he said, everyone who chooses to get in the ark will be saved. Everyone who chooses to stay outside the ark is going to drown. God decided who would live and who would die based on a standard that he set. He predestined a standard, a rule he established, an invitation he sent out. Not the man, not each individual person, but a rule, not the man, but the plan. If you want to be saved, get in the boat or you'll die. And so God closes the door, and that marks the end of the invitation period. At some point, God's mercy has to run out, or what's the point of it? Mercy runs out and punishment begins. Because if mercy never runs out, it's not mercy anymore. It's just what do you call it? When you just let a misbehaving child misbehave and you never punish them. Like there's a word for that. Or what do you call it when a prisoner is allowed just to roam free and without any jurisprudence, without any sense of you're going to be arrested, you're going to be convicted. Whatever that is, that's what it would be if it was just mercy all the time. If there was no end to mercy, it would just be lawlessness. It would just be people living however they want to live, taking advantage of mercy when it wouldn't even be mercy. Because mercy by its nature implies I'm giving you something you don't deserve. I'm not giving you something you deserve. But that implies the idea that I could get the other thing. And I'm very grateful I'm not getting it right now. But there has to be some time limit on it, or it's just free reign. It's just Thunderdome. That's not how it is. Throughout the Old Testament, that's the principle. That there is this cup of wrath that you're filling up. And when the cup reaches this brim, at God's deciding, God pours out the cup of wrath over on you, and he proverbially floods you. Here, he does it literally. It begins here. Rain falls from the sky, water rises up. So that's the idea of predestination, is God predetermined the method by which anyone who wanted to be saved would be saved. He's not hijacking your free will. He's not choosing arbitrarily or capriciously who's going to be saved, who's going to be lost. He says, here is where, I erased it, the boat. Here is where salvation is. Get in it and you will live. Don't get in it and you will die. I have determined this, and I predetermined how you're going to be saved. If you're going to be saved, it's by you getting in the boat. So get in the church and you'll be saved. Verse 17. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark. The water, I erased it. A rising tide lifts all arks, as the saying goes. And the lift up was above the earth. Oh, yeah, that's right. I had a whole thing. I had a funny thing. So, all right, let me just take a second. Yeah, let's take a second. So there's a flood coming. Not this one. I mean like a little local flood. It's going to be a big rain. Big rain's coming. And there's one of those guys. There's always one of those guys who says, well, I'm not leaving my house. I'm going to stay right here. So he stays right there. And the water starts coming down. The rain starts coming. And the water has reached to the edge of his front yard. And here comes a truck. Hey, mister, get in. I'll take you to higher ground. No, I have prayed and God is going to save me. Truck goes on, the man stays in. The water keeps falling. The flood waters keep rising. The man has to now get to his second floor because the water has completely consumed his entire bottom floor. Here comes a guy on a boat floating on what used to be his front yard. Hey man, get in. I'll take you to safety. No need. God has said God will save me. I will wait for God to save me. Boat goes on, man stays in. Water gets taller. Water gets higher. Man gets out on his roof. The water has reached all the way to his roof. And here comes a helicopter with a rope ladder to be lowered to him. Hey man, get in. I will take you to safety. No, sir. I have asked God and God will save me. Helicopter flies away. What happens next? Man dies. Man dies and meets God. And man says to God, why didn't you save me? And God says, I sent you a truck. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. Man, take a hint. You died because of you. That's predestination. I will send you the plan of salvation and then I will leave it in your hands. It has been predetermined how you can be saved. Take it or die. Anyway, verse 17. And the flood was upon the earth for 40 days, and the waters increased and lifted up the ark as it was. So Noah succeeded because God equipped Noah with what Noah needed to succeed. For Noah, it was build the ark. I keep doing that. It's not there anymore. You know what? I'm going to draw it. All right, there it is. For Noah, it was build the ark. God never commanded anyone else ever in human history to build the ark. For Noah, if Noah wanted to be saved, Noah's commandment to be saved was build the boat and get in. For everybody else, it was just get in. For you to be saved, you needed Jesus to obey God's command to build the church. You didn't build it. You can't build it. It's Jesus who built it. Now he commands you to get in. So if you want to be saved, it's a different commandment. God always has different commandments all throughout the Bible. For you, it's get in the boat. For you, it's believe and be baptized. Noah was told, don't get wet. Me, I'm told, get wet. Both result in salvation. Both, by the way, are a flood. A flood which washes away sin. 1 Peter 3:21. Verse 18. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. My Bible says the waters prevailed, surged, increased greatly, increased suddenly. Think of an army being challenged by an invading host, and they're outnumbered, and they're pushing them forward, and the army has to retreat a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. They keep trying to find different ground to find. Now imagine that is water, and water is relentless, and water does not care, and water cannot be negotiated with. It keeps coming, it keeps rising, it keeps elevating, and you have to keep finding new territory, and it keeps coming no matter what. Now imagine that if you're a sinner. And you look over there, and there's that stupid ark that you laughed at, and the door is shut. 19. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and upon all the high hills that were under the whole sky. My Bible says heaven, but sky. Were covered. You see Noah's ark. You are on a hillside and the water is getting too tall, so you think, I need to get to higher ground. So you get to a mountain and the water is still coming. You think, I need to get to a bigger mountain. So you get to the biggest mountain and the water is still coming. And then you start to think, I'm pretty sure this water is chasing me. Because no matter where I go, there it is, and it's not going to stop until I'm dead. And that's accurate. That's what God said. God didn't say, I'm going to clean the world, like literally. I'm not just Windexing earth here. I am killing sinners. I am bringing judgment upon the unrighteous. If you were righteous, you'd be in that boat over there, but that door is shut, literally and proverbially. So there you are. You scoffed, and now you're going to die. And you hear that, and you say, oh, but God is so cruel. No, you are so stubborn to reject mercy, to reject grace. And so now you have to feel the other hand of God. You rejected this one where grace was found. Now you take this one, where is judgment. Verse 20. 15 cubits up did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. 15 cubits is only like 15 of these. That doesn't seem very tall. It's 15 cubits from the tallest mountain there was on earth at the time. So whatever that mountain is, you take 15 of these, and you go up. When the waters finally stopped rising, they covered every mountain with 15 cubits to spare. In the beginning, page 1, the world was just water. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters. And then God said, eventually, let's have land come out of that water. And now God says, let's have water come over that land. And let's start everything over again, back to the beginning. But if all this was just a fairy tale, if all this was just a fantasy, if this was just Moses making stuff up, as is claimed, then it would have been a lot easier for him to just start here. Or not like post-flood, like just completely cut out like Genesis 2 through 9. Just cut that out because that's just unnecessary fluff. Like if I was an editor, you'd say, cut that out. You don't need that. You can lose that. You can just start with the first man was Noah and his family. Because it's essentially going to be the first man is Noah, the first wife is Mrs. Noah, first woman is Mrs. Noah, the first children are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You can just start there. You don't need Adam, you don't need Eve, you don't need Cain. They're just figments of our imagination anyway. They're made up anyway. You don't need them. So we'll just start with, in the beginning, there was just water, and then here comes Noah. After the waters receded, there's land. Here comes this man, Noah and his wife. That would have been so much cleaner, simpler, easier. Drop just Facebook. It's clean, it's simple, it's easy. Just do that, Moses. But Moses doesn't do that because Moses is not writing a fairy tale. He's writing history. And the thing about writing history is you're supposed to get it right. And so it starts with Adam and everything else that followed. Verse 21. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both a burden of cattle and of beasts and every creeping thing that creeped upon the earth. As promised, God delivered. All flesh died. God does not lie. And while he can have his mind changed, and frequently does, like a staggering amount of times, change from punishment to mercy, if his mind is not changed, you should never expect God to just let it go. God is not a lazy parent. If God says get right or get spanked, you better get right or you're going to get spanked. 22. Of life, he says, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, it ain't dry anymore, they all died. Man died, humanity died, but for those on the boat. But we do not blame God. Man chose to sin. Man chose to ignore the warnings of God. Man chose to spurn the invitation of God. Man chose to reject the ark of God. And so man was forced to endure the punishment of God. The wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23. You get what you pay for. I have time. Verse 23. And every substance was destroyed, that which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and creeping things and bird under the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and those that were on the ark with him. Unlike man, the animals did not sin. But I think we talked about that last week. They are collateral damage, a result of man having dominion over the animals, man sinning, man corrupting the world with sin, and so everything has to be wiped off the board in that sense. So the animals that leave the ark are immediately going to begin adapting to a different environment, new conditions, new variations of those animals are going to be born. An entirely new kingdom of life is going to inhabit the earth, all springing from this remnant that is preserved on the ark. But to get there, the whole world has to be completely changed, has to be completely remade, wiped over to start new. So it's going to rain, and with water coming down and water coming up, and mudslides and rock slides and landslides and stuff just smashing together with ferocity and with pressure and with the suddenness of it all. You're going to have trees ripped up from their roots, falling over, slides are going to take them out. You're going to have animals that are going to be like, what's happening? And they suddenly, wham, they're going to be slammed by a mudslide. They're going to die there, and they're going to immediately decompose, and boom, there's fossilization. And they're going to sit there, and they're going to be stuck there until a few thousand years later, some dude in a weird-looking hat is going to dig them up and be like, look, I found a bone. And some moron's going to say, that thing's been there for billions of years. I have a real problem with that, and I'll tell you why. So you have the surface level of the earth right here. Now you have mudslides and landslides and rock slides and everything else, and it's going to create new layers. On this, everyone agrees. It's just how long does it take to make them is the source of disagreement. But you have all these different layers. Meanwhile, here's our original earth ground level here, and you've got trees. But when the slides happen and water happens and rocks happen and everything happens, these trees are going to fall over. And they're going to get buried inside some of these layers. Sometimes they're going to get buried like this and like this through the layers, all the way through layers. And archaeologists and so forth are going to dig up these layers. And they're going to say, first, look at these layers. I don't see anything there, but I see the layers. And each one of those layers, they'll say, is billions of years old. And then millions, we'll say millions of years old. Millions of years. It's still longer than a few thousand, is my point. Millions of years old. But then they'll keep on digging. And you know what they'll find? And you know what they have found? Are fossilized trees dug through solid rock that encompasses multiple layers. Now, have you ever seen somebody who could grow a tree upside down through solid rock? What they're saying and what they're selling, I'm not buying. Something sudden happened, something like that happened, and then the flood was the result. Verse 24. The waters prevailed upon the earth for 150 days. It rained 40 days and 40 nights. The waters sat there for 150 days. Hey, into the chapter. You can hurry up and ring the bell now if you want. So, roughly 5 months. I'm always telling them to slow down, so now I'm telling them to hurry up. Roughly 5 months, and when all was done, the ark was floating 15 cubits above the highest mountain, however high that was at the time. What came next, how long Noah and everyone remained on the ark, is for us to discover in the next chapter. Chapter 8 is next week. See you then.